I just want to take a moment as we gather for Plenary 2 to say a huge thank you to TT's development partner, which this year is the FIA Foundation. The FIA Foundation, we thank you. Thank you for being our development partner. Applause is welcome. Oh my goodness, this plenary, I always feel that every plenary at TT is the most important one every time I start thinking about it. Road safety leadership to 2030. Can that not be the most important plenary that we have to focus on because of what it means for us as citizens around the world? I'm going to say that for plenary 3 and 4 and 5 as well, but I think you know what I'm saying here. Fresh from a road safety gathering that was spectacular, that he's still glowing from the success of it, is our keynote speaker for road safety leadership to 2030. Vanessa Boulajou is the Director General of the National Road Safety Agency for the Kingdom of Morocco. Just check out his smile and you can gauge his mood. It's so good to have you. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to send the regard and apologize of my minister, Mr. Kayouf, the Minister of Transport and Logistics. He would like to attend this conference, but some commitment for the last time. He was unable maybe to attend this meeting. And I am delivering this speech on behalf of him. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, it is a pleasure to join you at the Transforming Transportation event. Today, I am honored to reflect on the outcomes of the recent Global Ministerial Conference on Road Safety and Morocco's ongoing leadership in this crucial field. The Marrakesh Ministerial was historic, held for the first time in Africa in an Arabophone and Francophone country. It brought together more than 5,000 participants from 146 countries and 86 ministers and vice ministers, including also governments, international organizations, and key stakeholders, all united by a shared commitment to road safety as a global priority. A major achievement of the conference was the strong mobilization of African countries and African leaders, with the Marrakesh Declaration emphasizing the need for implementation, accountability, and sustainable investment. It is also highlighted the importance of integrating road safety into a broader development agenda and recognized the private sector role in driving innovation and implementation. The conference has also been marked by the announcement of the Royal Initiative, the Mohammed VI International Road Safety Prize, that reward innovative scientific and technical projects in this field, with the value of $500,000, and will be awarded at all future editions of this conference. Building on this momentum, Morocco remains committed to advancing road safety, both regionally and globally. As the Secretariat of the African Road Safety Observatory, Morocco is central to improving data collection and analysis across the continent, ensuring evidence-based policies. We are also committed to sharing best practices to ensure that commitment results in tangible impacts. A central element of Morocco's transport vision is integrating road safety within decarbonization. Sustainable mobility must be both environmentally friendly and safe, and we are embedding safety consideration into all infrastructure projects. Morocco is aligning its road safety goals with climate objective, including investment in public transport, safer infrastructure, and cleaner vehicle technologies. Our efforts to enhance sustainability are reflected in projects such as the expansion of tramway network in Casablanca and Rabat Saleh, the introduction of electric buses in Marrakesh and Rabat, and the development of buses rapid transit BRT system in Casablanca, Marrakesh, and Agadir. Additionally, the Al Borak, a high-speed rail system, has improved connectivity between Casablanca and Tangier in the north, reducing travel time and contributing to cleaner transport. Plans to extend the Al Borak system to Marrakesh and Agadir reflect our broader commitment to modernizing transport infrastructure and reducing emissions. Electromobility is a priority for Morocco also, and we are expanding changing infrastructure and accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles. The improved project will help monitor and verify transport emission while strengthening regulation to support cleaner vehicles. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals on road safety requires decisive action and financial commitment. Morocco is actively mobilizing resources domestically and internationally to support road safety initiatives. We are collaborating with Development Bank, the private sector, and multilateral partners to ensure road safety remains a priority in transport financing. And here, I would like to thank from the heart the World Bank and the Global Road Safety Facility for all their support. Finally, I am proud to highlight Morocco's groundbreaking decision to mandate the inclusion of 2 standard helmets with every motorcycle sale. This initiative, inspired by the work of John Todd, ensures access to United Nations homologated helmets, making safety more accessible for all. The Minister of Transport and Logistics, Mr. Abdel Samad Kayouh, is committed to making life-saving protective gear available to all citizens, helping reduce fatalities and injuries among motorcyclists, one of the most vulnerable road user group in our country. The road ahead is clear. Road safety must remain at the heart of our transport and development agenda. A new action plan for road safety for the next coming 5 years in Morocco is ready and will be launched in the next 2 months by the Interministerial Committee for Road Safety chaired by the head of the government. In this regard, let us continue to work together to turn our commitment into concrete actions, making mobility safer, cleaner, and more sustainable for all. Thank you so much.
I am going to ask our panelists to come on stage, find your name tags, please do that now, and be seated. Road Safety Leadership for 2030 is also an online conversation as well. The hashtag is TTDC25, or you can use the live chat. And then when we get to a little bit later in our conversation, please do use the microphone, stand behind the microphones, and I will know to include you in the conversation. All right, let me introduce you to your plenary. Hello, Manta. Please use the microphone, although you have a very powerful voice. Wonderful. Manta, will you tell the few people in this room and the people around the world your official title, please?
So good morning, everyone in the room, and good afternoon, good evening, in case we are streaming this elsewhere. I'm Mamta Murthy. I'm the Vice President of the People Vertical here at the World Bank. And that means that I work, and the teams I cover work on education, healthcare, social protection, gender, and the Human Capital Project.
Good to have you. Kelly Larson, welcome. Is there any conversation that can happen without you in it when we're talking about road safety?
Absolutely. Because there are so many experts around this room, around the world, that play such a significant part in making our roads safer. So I'm just a small part representing Bloomberg Philanthropies.
We appreciate your representation. Maria Eugenia, it's good to have you. Welcome. Please tell our audience your official title, please.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here today. I am the head of department in the Madrid city, in the Planning and Mobility Infrastructure the Madrid department.
Mm-hmm. Good to have you. And Minister Chris Bonnet, good to have you too. Would you tell our audience what you're minister for? What is your portfolio?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm the minister of too much. If you can put like that.
A very wide-ranging, broad portfolio.
Yeah, there you go. Minister for Transport, Infrastructure, and Public Works. So basically, everything that happens physically on the island of Malta, I'm responsible for it.
You're a brilliant man. I don't know how your shoulders are not broader. Thank you for making time for us. Plenary, we are going to start with the work you are doing right now. Let me start with Maria Eugenia. If you take us to Madrid, when we're looking at road safety, what do you want to talk about? What are you doing that our audience here at TT will want to lean into and listen to?
Yeah, I would say that the most remarkable aspect in what we are doing is that we have put road safety at the core of our city strategies. In 2019, we approved the Sustainability Strategy Madrid 360, and the two instruments, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan and the Mobility Ordinance. Both instruments are founded on one principle, that road safety is not an afterthought. It is at the forefront of all the mobility decisions that we make. When we talk about road safety in a city like Madrid, it is about providing a framework so everybody, all the people in Madrid can move safely and with confidence. It is how we can share our streets and public space in a way that everyone, drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, keep safe. And our actions cover different areas. We are working on urban design. We have to rethink our cities, and we have developed a guideline to design sensitive areas like school streets, using calming traffic measures with tactical design. Also improving, giving priority to pedestrians with wide sidewalks and continuous and accessible sidewalks, itineraries. We're improving the crossings with visibility, signage. We are also improving our infrastructures. We are remodeling some of the roads, urban roads that were designed under the car-centric paradigm, and we are now transforming them in complete streets with segregated lanes for bikes, segregated lanes for traffic, for public transportation as well, and with giving priority to pedestrians with accessible itineraries. We have an office, the accessibility office, that inform all the projects that we do in the city. Also to ensure that people with reduced mobility can move around the city safely. Now we are working on a major project, infrastructure project. We are relocating underground one of the most congested highways in the city that were embedded in the urban fabric and breaking the city. And with the space that we will recover, we will transform it in a complete street that stitches the city together again. We are also working with technology. Technology is important. We use technology for big data also cameras with artificial intelligence to identify the user's trajectories and then design also prevent conflicts. Also for enforcement, speed enforcement, which is a big issue. We use radars, cameras, so we use technology and we have smart traffic lights as well to optimize the flow. We are, of course, working on education, raising awareness, and we have launched public communication campaigns, and also in the educational institutions, schools. It is very important that road safety is part of the education curricula. And
what does that look like? So how old would I be before I got some road safety education in Madrid? You're talking about education in the curriculum.
Yeah.
So at school, I would learn about it at school. How old would I be?
Oh, introducing subjects.
Yeah.
Like maps,
I'm too old now, I know that. But if I was younger, what age would you be to learn this at school?
Oh, I think, well, I don't know, but the sooner the better, I think. Like a small, if that's something that it is part, I would say like in kindergarten.
Okay, 3-4 years old?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Something that...
Right. I want you to take a pause for a moment. Was there another city that you looked at as your model, as your inspiration?
Well, we look at Madrid, and not we work with other cities. We participate in networks like Eurocities, Polis, and it is very interesting to see good practices. The European Union promote the transferability of good practices, but context is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So the context, the history, the culture of every place is very important. So, of course, we have good practices that we try and implement in our city, but always considering our context and our people needs.
Yeah. Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Bloomberg Philanthropies, our mission is to ensure better, longer lives for the greatest number of people. And what a better public health issue to address road safety to meet that mission. And so at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we have supported road safety since 2007 and have saved at least 312,000 lives through the strategy that we're implementing through international partners supporting local governments and national governments. So our strategy is to, one, strengthen road safety policies at the national level. And at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we believe strongly in hard-hitting advocacy. Mike generously provides funding so that we can do lobbying to strengthen those laws, and we know stronger laws will save lives. So we're working currently in 15 countries to strengthen national policies. And since we started, we have strengthened, as in in partnership with the country, strengthened over 100 policies and protecting 4 billion people around the world. We also work at the subnational level where we get the highest level political buy-in to actually implement those policies in their respective countries. So we're currently working in 27 cities and 2 states in low and middle income countries. And we're prioritizing a number of different interventions. Obviously, infrastructure is critical. We're really pushing cities to design their streets for people, not cars. We also know that data drives everything, and we are working very hard to understand the circumstances of road traffic crashes, injuries, and fatalities, so cities can in turn develop stronger strategies to address deaths in their cities. We're also supporting enforcement. So we have strong enforcement of those road safety policies. And then also partnering with cities to air hard-hitting media campaigns. So we have a very comprehensive strategy. We work with international partners to support local governments. And earlier this morning, we heard about the importance of building capacity and being locally led. So while we're based in New York City and working with international partners, we recognize the important role of our teams on the ground and supporting governments to do the work that they need to do to save lives. So we're in the sixth year of a six-year investment. And we'll talk more about what's to come.
When your teams are on the ground, can you give us an example of what they're doing?
So we have local partners that work on infrastructure, that partner with the police, that are connected to the mayor's or equivalent's office. And so they are serving as technical experts so that capacity can be built in the cities, and also are the link between those international partners that can provide that technical expertise. And I have to say, Ani said something about me traveling around the world.
Yeah.
It is the greatest gift to see the expertise in the areas where we're working. It's something that we need to acknowledge and we need to continue to build.
Femi, I'd like to come in because I want to zoom out a little bit from road safety. In fact, the reason why I'm in this conversation at all is because of the importance of road infrastructure and safe use of roads for improving the lives of people. So I work on education, healthcare, and opportunities for women. And one of the things that we are very struck by is that when we talk about getting children to school, very often we focus on school infrastructure, whereas we actually also need to focus on road infrastructure. We need to focus on bicycles and modes of transport, and all of these things have to be safe. So let me give you an example of an evaluation that has been completed on a very large road building program in India. And of course, a road building program has huge impacts, right? It supports economic growth, it connects people to jobs. But I was particularly interested to see the impact on school attendance. This large road building program had a huge impact on school attendance, not just on getting kids to school, but on school completion. Not only did kids go to school, they completed school. But what about whether they learned anything in school or not? Well, guess what? The road building program also increased the proportion of kids, actually girls and boys, but particularly girls, who passed the school leaving exam. So when people in education think about how to get more kids in school, they don't actually think about road infrastructure or roads, but they ought to. And I'll come to road safety, but before that, I want to give one more example. Children also need to be able to get to school. And one of the very interesting things is, especially in rural areas, one of the easiest ways to get to school is using a bicycle. And there are evaluations of programs at scale which show that actually providing a bicycle to a teenage child, an adolescent, maybe I shouldn't say child, is actually quite an effective way of getting children to school. And in fact, in contexts where it's unsafe for teenage girls to be out of the home, providing a bicycle is a very good way of getting them to school. And actually, it addresses both the transport issue and the safety issue. So given that we know that there are all these benefits of road infrastructure and transport infrastructure, now I want to come to road safety, which is the topic of this session. Now, road safety is a very important issue because it is a very large source of mortality. It's the third largest cause. Traffic accidents, road accidents are the third largest cause of mortality in the developing world. I don't like to say global south. And that's why we need to address traffic conditions and traffic safety. Now, there are many ways of doing this, and actually many of you are more qualified to speak about this than I am. But I think if we don't address this, the loss of all the investment that has been made, of the kids going to school, of the connection to job opportunities and so on, would be lost. I love to give the example of Tamil Nadu in India because I'm half Tamil. And that's a good example of a state, a provincial program that has done a lot to reduce traffic fatalities. And there are other such examples from the world over, which I hope we are going to get to in the course of this panel. Thank you.
What stands out for me in the title of this plenary is the L word, leadership. It's not road safety, general big conversation. It's leadership. Minister, how are you leading? What's the work you're doing?
Wow. I have been thinking about what I was going to answer you ever since we started. But then the brilliant panelists spoke, and every time my mind went, start again. How do you follow that? I think the most important, I learned very quickly, I've been Minister for Transport for the past year now. What I learned very quickly is that transport works in a very different way than other forms of policy making in government. Because as you said in the first panel, policy is fine, it's important, but you cannot just have policy gathering dust on a shelf. Implementation is key in everything. And when I look at what happened in Malta, for some perspective, Malta is a very, very small island. We're talking about 116 square kilometers, in which in every square kilometer you have 1,700 people. So that's how dense. It's the most densely populated country in Europe. That brings with it problems related to mobility. And apart from the mobility problems, which kind of transport system am I going to use? We are very car-centric. And how do you make sure that all those people using that network, most of them at the same time, are kept safe? And that is where the difficult part starts. So what we're doing in trying to lead is by convincing people first and foremost that we are all using the same roads, and that the first cardinal principle, in my opinion, is that we respect each other when we are using those roads. Now, we had issues like many Mediterranean countries where people use the roads, but don't really care about those around them. As long as I get from A to B, the fastest way and the most comfortable way, I'll do it. And that creates problems. Now, we devised our first ever road safety strategy in Malta 10 years ago. So we had the first road safety strategy going on from 2014 to 2024. And as we were saying, implementation is key. We managed to implement 75% of it. I say only 75% of it, because once you go from policy to implementation, that's when the game changes. From theory to fact, things start changing. So what we concentrated on: education, infrastructure, education, enforcement, education. So education features in every part of what we're doing in road safety. Infrastructure is very important because the roads in Malta 10 years ago, admittedly, were just roads with really little care about how safe these roads were. They were very rudimentary when it came to safety features. In the last 10 years, we improved a lot. The policy has helped us a lot in having better designs, better road design, better roads markings, better soft furniture like crash barriers, which have improved a lot. We concentrated a lot in trying to convince the public to change vehicles. In Malta, changing vehicles was not something which was very common. So you had a car, one family car, that used to last 20, 25 years. Now, we can all agree, I think, that the cars that are being built, that have been built in the last decade, have more safety features, are much safer than the cars that were built 20, 25, 30 years ago. So convincing people to change their cars and changing, especially businesses, to change their fleets was not an easy task. So the government led by incentivizing the change. One can go on because many things have happened, but I think to answer your question properly, where you lead, first of all, you lead by example, one. Number two, you have to lead in showing people there is a better alternative to what you're doing. That's not easy. It's the most difficult part of them all because people set to be very set in their ways, in their comfort zones. But if you manage to convince people that we can do better and your children are safer and the future is safer, then even the next generation will be more adaptive to this kind of change. I'll tell you just this thing. I was born in 1982, and like many kids of my generation, I grew up watching sport on TV. I mean, my mother thought I'd get brain damage from all the television I watched, but we used to watch a lot of sport. And something that my generation has been stuck with is Formula One. I say Mr. Todd here is one of my childhood heroes. Formula One, the death of Ayrton Senna. I was 12 when that happened. And I will never forget this. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was at home, and we see this horrific accident coming right on the back of another horrific accident the day before with Roland Ratzenberger, who also died. And then we saw, suddenly my generation saw Formula One changing its attitude and making Formula One safe as can be. And today you can say it's very safe. Motorsports are much safer. So we grew up in a generation where we realized that the roads we are using have to be safer. Now that generation is leading, and we're trying to introduce these concepts for the generation that comes after us. But our generation grew up with cars. We still love cars. People my age still love cars a lot. So what we have to do, we have to lead in a way, and I heard my colleagues here speaking brilliantly, is how to get the younger generation to use those alternative modes of transport by giving them the right infrastructure, the right education, the right opportunities, and the right incentives. So when they will take our place, they will make it easier for the next generation to take care more of the environment around them, respect for each other, and maybe we won't need to educate so much because they will be already educated in these subjects.
Can I follow up on the education part? One of our colleagues in Africa last year said, education without enforcement is entertainment. And so when we talk about education, we need to be very clear on what is effective. And so from our perspective at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we want to create hard-hitting media campaigns that have been focus group tested and that are followed by enforcement, whether it be on speed, seatbelts, helmets, drinking and driving. And so I just want to reinforce that, and that, you know, educating children is nice, but what we really need to prioritize is the environment that children are in, so that infrastructure provides for a safe opportunity for them to get to school.
Actually, I fully agree with what was just said. If you look at the data on how people behave, a lot of your ability to take in a message, whether it's from media or whether it's from peers, is a function of your level of education. So if you're broadcasting to a population which just has primary school education, makes it much harder for them to take in the message than if you're broadcasting to a population which has completed secondary or where the majority of people have some tertiary education. So I think the message hits the higher the level of education, the easier, if you like, it is to get to induce some behavior change.
I just want to reinforce that's the importance of focus group testing so that you can understand what is going to be the motivating factor on the people in that respective jurisdiction.
So about a decade ago, when Minister, you were talking about the first road safety policy for Malta, road safety wasn't taken that seriously. It wasn't a priority. Where are we now? Because that for me still is one of the main challenges, is elevating how important it is out of all of the many different areas of public health policy.
The road safety strategy that was done 10 years ago actually helped to put the road safety agenda high up in the priorities list, even with the population in itself. So if before you had a population that accepted things like that someone dies on the road was accepted. If you're driving, you have that risk, it can happen to you. That was the mentality before. Now, in these 10 years, with education, enforcement, I couldn't agree more with your statement, infrastructure. Now people have become, sometimes when you talk about something, it goes into the collective mind of people, then people start talking about it. And that's what we wanted to do with the first policy, get people to engage in the road safety discussion. Now we're looking at the next 10 years. And we had a discussion with our colleagues yesterday about what is happening in Malta right now, because the World Bank is going to be having a pivotal role in the setting up of the next 10 years strategy, is how to improve the policy in a way whereby we can start accounting for the human element in it. So we speak about infrastructure, but what about human error when it comes to driving? That is something that we have to look at. It's something that we have to make policies for, implement projects for. Human error is an essential part of everything we do in life. And on the road, it's there. So you have to create what we're calling the safe system, where you know that accidents are unfortunately inevitable, but deaths and injuries can be preventable. So how do you make sure that the accidents you have on the road, which will still happen, no matter how safe our roads are, because we do make mistakes and you can have engine failures and all that, how do we make sure that what we do, the policies we do, the projects that we carry out, the infrastructural works that we carry out, make sure that account for that human error?
So, Minister, is this just a general question? Do you want to ask someone who's sitting next to you on the
maybe.
panel? Well, what's that? If it's a how question and we are talking to road safety leaders, who answers that question?
Well, that's a very good question. That's why we came to the World Bank.
Good question about a good question.
That's why we came here, to make sure, because I think one of the most important. Now, I am the politician here. Now, the politician, in my opinion, I was not in politics 4 years ago, so I happened to be here by accident, if you can say that. But I always thought that the main role of the politician before doing is to listen. The worst kind of politician you can have, in my opinion, is someone who thinks who knows too much, right?
Yeah.
The politician first has to listen, and listen to people who actually know what they're talking about. And in this particular field, in this particular subject, that is very, very important, because
Chris, Minister, I'm going to get you to listen for a second then.
yes, of course. There you
Because
go.
I've got some questions that have come in
Of
online.
course, there you go.
And this one is going to be for Maria Eugenia. Luis Lopez asks, how does the planning of city infrastructure affect the reduction of road accidents in Madrid?
Well, when we started working in 2019 in Madrid City Council, the reality was that while road safety had improved in the national roads, road safety, the number of fatalities in Madrid have increased by 6%. So that's why we started working with in the different areas and with a holistic strategy. And if you specifically say about, we have improved the number of fatalities, sorry. And if we specifically, I don't have the number of how, what is the impact of infrastructure improvement.
Let me ask Kelly. Kelly, this is probably something that you do have the data on. I'll share the question with you.
Yes.
Thank you for getting us started.
Well,
Infrastructure, how does that reduce?
Well, we know that speed kills about 50% of the 1.2 million people that die every single year on roads. And so you reduce speed, you're going to reduce deaths. And infrastructure plays a significant role in bringing down deaths. And so through our work at Bloomberg Philanthropies, we're working with transport agencies to teach them, build their capacity on how roads should be designed so that they're designed for the mobility of people and not for the speed or the mobility of vehicles. So I don't have specific numbers for you, but we know bring down speed, you're going to save lives.
Sure. And let me just, Mamta, before you say what you're about to say, let me just invite you, if you've got questions or thoughts for our road leadership plenary, please stand behind a microphone. I've already got online questions, so I will keep adding those until I see you standing behind the microphone. Yes, Mamta, please go ahead.
I just want to speak about the power of data. So I'm not as much of an expert as you on this panel, but I do know that collecting data on where accidents happen and why they happen can really help improve the way you design traffic flows, how the kinds of soft furniture you may want to install, the right kind of alert and alarms to people who are using the road. Remember that in developing countries, you've got multiple users on the same road. In the country that I come from, you might have a bullock cart, a bicycle, a motorcycle, an auto rickshaw, a car, right? Or and a camel is what indeed. So how you manage traffic in a complex context, you can improve it by looking at data, at what happens. And how do you prevent that human and animal error that the minister was talking about? The other thing I want to say that really matters is the speed that you get to the people who are involved in the accident, and how fast your emergency services respond. And then, of course, there's the medical care side as well. But all of these are things that can actually be improved with collecting data on what's happening on the road, and that can help in the design of policy.
Yeah, well, in Madrid we have cameras, and we monitor real traffic in real time. So we can detect when an incident happens and act rapidly. And that's very important, yeah.
I'll just say something. When we talk about infrastructure, most of the time we think about concrete, iron, and all that. What is emerging, and it's very important, that technology is an integral part of the infrastructure. That's one of the starting points, actually, from where you have to go.
I'm so glad you asked that, because Abdul Malik Ibrahim, thank you. Excellent question. Good timing. What role can emerging technologies play in creating safe and a more accessible road environment? You were just about to tell us,
yes,
but I wanted to pair your answer with this question.
Right now, we're looking at artificial intelligence. I mean, this big elephant in the room that no one really knows exactly how much we should tap into it. But when it comes to infrastructure, and I'll be very short with this, when it comes to infrastructure, if you manage to build a road that can already predict, because of the data it has collected in the past on accidents that have happened, and can predict how people are going to drive through it, that is something that will enhance safety in our roads. So that would be an integral part of the infrastructure. So we have to tap into technology. Technology, we should look at it as something that can be an invaluable tool to help us save lives in this case.
Thank you.
Very much. My name is Atiq Ahmed, and I represent Islamic Development Bank. Thank you very much for the panelists giving us really the real picture of the situation. My question is related to vulnerable users. One of the panelists highlighted the shared use of the road. As of today, I think in 2023, the accident or fatalities happen with these group of road users were 53%. And 93% of the were in the middle and low-income countries. So this is a big issue. And if we really want to achieve the 2030 targets of SDG related to safe road safety, it is important to consider this aspect and vulnerable groups, in my opinion. My question to the leaders here is related to how the governments can really prioritize this aspect of protecting the road vulnerable group when they are planning for the infrastructure, because protection is probably the only action which can prevent these kind of accident. So this is my short question to the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to take a couple of questions. Sorry to step on your applause. Please continue it. I like it when questions get applause. Yes, sir, go ahead with your question.
Yes, hello, thanks. My name is Alejandro Lara, and I'm so happy to have a politician on the panel, because that's actually a question for you. I was wondering, what is the, how you handle the decision-making process within the government? Because sometimes you can be, have an education, which I truly agree with you, but education is, in my view, is extremely important, how to educate others, communities, and citizens all around. And but then it can be a priority for you during this government, but then the next government comes and it's not a priority anymore. So it's being put down at the very bottom. And then it becomes not so important. So I just wondering, how to better improve that decision-making process that is also sustainable, that is being, like thinking long-term.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I'm going to go to the back microphone because I see you. I haven't forgotten you. What is your question?
Thank you so much. I think my question will follow the previous speaker's question. I like that we have a politician on the panel, and I think I was triggered by the word politics. I just want to find out where the balance is in terms of enforcement, governance, and where politics comes in. Because usually with road safety, you have to make a lot of difficult decisions that the public might not always smile upon. So sometimes you would ideally want to listen to people who know what they're doing, but politics usually favors you listening to the people. So I just want to find out where we draw the line and where you balance things as a politician. Thank you.
All right, Minister, I'm going to ask you to answer that very briefly.
Yes, I'll try.
And also honestly, don't give us a politician's answer.
No, I'm going to be. First of all, I was never in a room where people were so happy to be with a politician. So thank you very much.
It's a safe space.
It rarely happens. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about Malta. The advantage with Malta is that we're a small island and we all know each other, right? So this has worked to our advantage because there's a government and an opposition. There's two parties in Malta. And we've known each other since university. We all know each other very well. When it came to road safety, what we actually did was that we did something that normally politicians don't do. Us and the opposition talked to each other about it and said, listen, we're looking at the future here. We're looking at our kids now. Let's try to agree on where we have to go, which is not difficult, which is not easy when it comes to political parties. But let's try to agree where we have to go. And then we can start criticizing each other on the implementation side of it. If I am late as a minister in implementing something we agreed on, your criticism will be more powerful. So that is something we tried to do. It is something that we are managing in doing because we all know each other. We're a small country. I can imagine that in larger realities, that might be a bit more tricky. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes taking hard decisions is very difficult for a politician because a politician thrives on popularity. You don't get votes if you're not popular. So the balance is very difficult. But this we found that may work, that in transport, in order to make sure that we reduce congestion, which has become a problem in Malta, and to get people off their cars and on bikes and walking, we need at least to have a common policy. So if we lose the next election, we know already that who's coming after is going to continue on what we build. The key word here is together.
Yeah.
If I try to do it myself and force it on the opposition, it won't happen. But the fact that we're working together on it, when the opposition will come into government one day, it will already feel like part of it.
I thought
and
of
maybe we'll continue.
I thought of a way to describe what you're talking about. We could call it the Malta model.
I hope to achieve
Right?
that. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
We
but
could have that.
We're at a very good point.
All right, Mamta, I'm going to adapt a question for you. And that is about vulnerable users, because I know that that is something that you care deeply about and your team cares deeply about. So how do governments, how do leaders, let's say, prioritize looking after those vulnerable groups? It was a question for a government level speaker, but I know you've got a take on this and you've seen how governments operate. So maybe not how do they, but maybe how should they?
Thank you, Femi, and I also want to thank the speaker for the question. I think it comes down to understanding your pattern of road use. Who is using it and when, and what makes them vulnerable, okay? In the morning, people are going to work and kids are going to school. And if the kids are going to school on a bicycle or in, sitting on the pillion of their parent who's riding a two-wheeler, and there's a lot of traffic at that time, that's what you've got to be thinking about, right? In the afternoon, it's going to be different. And again, in the mid-afternoon, it's returning from school. And then in the evening, it's going to be different. I think you've got to understand your pattern of road use incredibly well in order to design things, design measures that will protect children and will protect other users. In most parts of the developing world where the countries are rapidly urbanizing, you have commuters coming into work into towns and smaller towns. You also have lots of road users on foot. And that's an issue that you're going to have to deal with. So the way it should be done is you need to get data on road use and understand the vulnerabilities, where the accidents are occurring, where the fatalities lie. I want to make one last point. When we talk about road safety, we often think about fatality only. I want to make the point that we have to think about morbidity. People survive road accidents and their quality of life can be very poor. And so we have to think about morbidity as well as a cost of lack of road safety. And then finally, the majority of people who are killed in road accidents in developing countries are men. And the majority of those who are left behind and often who have to take care of things are women and children. So there is this very interesting dimension as well. When by focusing just on fatalities, we're sort of forgetting the families that are left behind, and that needs to factor into our calculations. Kelly. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's the way I would approach it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Kelly.
I just want to say that they're vulnerable road users is because vehicles rule the road and roads are designed for vehicles. And so if we want to address saving lives and making mobility safer, we need to redesign roads and make sure that speed is not the name of the game, it's speed management.
Maria Eugenia. We had a couple of questions which was about politics, basically. When you're in power, this is the road safety policy. When you're out of power, it gets reversed, it goes backwards and forwards. The minister had a really interesting take on, if you're small enough and you can talk to each other, that won't happen. In bigger federal organizations, that's not an option. So are we just going to suffer this in policy, out of policy, in government, out of government? What do you do in Spain?
Well, I work for the city.
I know, but you also, the city has a view of what's happening federally. And do you see, and you also suffer from that change in policy. Do you see that back and forth?
Well, we have seen that in every place now here, and we can see this back and forth. But I think that we are now we have commitment, long-term commitments. Our policies are aligned. The national, the regional, and the local policies are aligned with the European strategies, with the goals for 2030 and 2050.
Okay.
And it is more difficult to see this, this change of opinions, and also public. And I think that this is also permeating in the citizens, and so
I understand. Thank you.
Can I just say that when we started our work in 2020, we went to the highest level of leadership at the city level and at the national government level and got their commitment that they wanted to work on road safety. So in the 27 cities, the mayors bought into reducing road traffic fatalities and injuries by doing what we know works. And then also at the national level, we had that commitment, and we worked really hard and continue to find those champions and build the voice of those champions. And it's multiple champions, not just one. And that's worked very well for us.
Minister, as you're so popular in this room right now, I'm going to ask you to tell the people standing behind those microphones that we've run out of time. But you would love to speak to them all personally over lunch.
Really? I'll do it for you, yes.
Please, go ahead.
It's my fault. It's my fault. We ran out of time.
David Ward really wants to make a point.
Oh.
I live in Malta, so I
come to the microphone.
Session. I spent 2 years living in Malta, Santa Lucia's College, Birkirkara. Anyway, I just want a quick warning about human error. The worst, most abused statistic is 95% of crashes are caused by driver error. The real study that there have been many, but the origins of this was NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. When you actually look at the study, it doesn't say that. What it says is in the last in a causal chain was driver error. And if I can illustrate this, that's why we have to look at everything. We have to look at roads, we have to look at infrastructure. I can illustrate this with an example, a very sad example. A young couple died near where I live in Kent. Very young lady was pregnant. They came to a rural intersection. He made a driver error. He didn't realize, because there was a problem with the road signage was poor, and he went straight through, was hit by a truck, and they both killed instantly. Very easy to apportion that to driver error. But in fact, the infrastructure was appalling. And above all else, the speed limit was 60 miles an hour. So that is the issue. You've got to be very cautious about attributing too much to human error, or you completely underestimate these other factors. Thank you very much.
I want to show you two most optimistic people in the room, and they're standing behind that microphone. They're also good at coping with disappointment when I say, gentlemen, please take your seat. But we thank you for stretching your legs. This is the end of the Road Leadership Towards 2030 panel. I thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the plenary. I am now the most hated woman in the room. Plenary, thank you so much. We appreciate you. The fact that we have so much more to say speaks to the conversation we just had. Please take your way off the stage. We are not over yet. This plenary is not over yet. There will be more time for questions. Take your seat. Jean Tot will be joining us in 30 seconds. Thank you. Our road safety conversation continues. Please stay in the room. Thank you. You're here. Actually, maybe, do you want to be here? Do you want to be here? Oh, it's here. Sit here. Sit here. There you are. Thank you. Nice to see you. All right. Please. All right. Please take your seats. Thank you, everybody. We continue. And it may well be that your question you were burning to ask, you can ask to Jean Tot himself. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Have this microphone.
Thank you.
What did you make of that conversation we just had? You sit in so many conversations about road safety all of the time. What did you make of that one that we just had, Jean Tot?
First, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the World Bank for making this impressive conference and for giving me the opportunity of discussing with you and, of course, with the audience. You know, I was, I would say, very impressed by all the comments and by all what was said about what I call a silent pandemic. And but clearly, what is very important, you know, we just come back from a very interesting conference which was hosted by the government of Morocco, and I see here my friend Benasser, who have been the key in organizing this conference together with the Minister of Transport, Caillou, and all the government of Morocco. And we had, during 1 week, 100 countries represented.
86 ministers.
86 ministers,
That's extraordinary.
5,000 people. So what is very important is, I mean, what and the Minister of Malta, Minister of Transport of Malta mentioned that. What are the action? We know the problem.
Yeah.
You know, we know the intensity of the situation. I mean, the representative of the bank was mentioning is the third biggest cause of death in the world. So the whole idea, we have the prescriptions, but how do we implement these prescriptions?
How do you get that out? Like, how do you get people to take the medicine? Like, as the UN Secretary General's special envoy on road safety, you have a considerable amount of influence. What should happen next after Morocco? What are your expectations? Having had that extraordinary meeting, now what? It's the implementation part, correct?
You know, I mean, clearly, and the first ministerial meeting occurred in 2010. Sorry, in 2010 in Moscow. 5 years after, we had a meeting in Brasilia. Then in 2020 in Stockholm. Now in Marrakesh. Unfortunately, the figures are still not good. And we know who are the best in the class. We know who are the worst in the class. So I will say first, I think the best in the class, and it's something we don't speak enough, should give the hand to the worst in the class. The understanding when you have, in the life, I think it's very important to give the hand. So very often, when I travel, incidentally, I remember being last year in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, and I asked to visit the emergency care. And I met the doctor, very nice people, and I said, how many beds you have available? He said 210. What is the occupancy rate? 110%. Then I went around, I visited the extensive care emergency, and honestly, it was horrendous. That is the situation. And then after that, I was hosted by the European Union ambassador and about 10 other ambassadors from different countries, Japan, Germany, France. And I said, but guys, in your country, situation has improved drastically. I'm French. 50 years ago, 65 million population, you had 18,000 people dying on the road. Last year, with 3 times more vehicles, 3,200. So, it's significant progress. We could not say we are happy because still, claiming 3,200 fatalities. And it's something also which was mentioned in the panel before. You have the fatalities, but we have the injured people. The WHO is recognizing about 50 million injuries with disabilities every year. It's something which is absolutely horrendous. So, how can we make a strong team working together and addressing this pandemic? So, that's exactly what was discussed
Sure.
in Morocco.
I'm going to ask you something very specific because I was talking to Jean Tot last week, and we were making arrangements for video and what the background would look like, and his team said it's arranged, and Jean Tot said, because it's arranged doesn't mean it's going to happen. It needs to be implemented. So how do we implement?
So again, it was discussed. Education is essential.
Right.
We need to make sure that governments are going to put road safety in the agenda. So that's in the head of the country, together with the Minister of Transport, Education, Police, and Health. It has to be a team working at the ministerial level with each province and put priority on top of the agenda. And it's around the education, and we discussed it was discussed earlier. Yeah. Law enforcement, quality of vehicles, quality of roads, quality of post-crash care. And we know very well, that, that's about the campaign. I saw some pictures earlier. Backlinks the safety belt, proper helmet. We need to speak about helmet a bit later. So, speed, drug and drink driving, and text driving, we will be able to significantly divide by 2 and achieve.
So it's not a mystery. We know what we need to do. It's very clear.
So for me, the 2 priorities is education and law enforcement. But it's easy to say. Education, you can achieve that. Law enforcement is more complicated because we know that in most vulnerable countries there is corruption. So that makes law enforcement difficult.
Let's talk about the Safe and Affordable Helmet Initiative. You brought a helmet with you. I like this show and tell part of transforming transportation. And would you like me to hold the book?
No, it's okay.
You go. Okay.
So go ahead. Some story, and everybody knows that I was involved in motor racing earlier.
Yeah.
And it was also mentioned earlier by the minister. And incidentally, I got a lot of criticism when I got involved when I got passionate about road safety, because people said, how Mr. Speed can be Mr. Road Safety? But the minister said something very interesting. The progress we had in motor racing over the decades. And motorsport is not a dangerous sport as it used to be. So clearly, we know that in the vulnerable world, people are not wearing helmet. And if they do wear a helmet, it breaks like this glass. So the problem is ventilation, because very often in those developing countries, it's very warm, and the price, because there is no money. So we have been able to develop with certain factories UN EC 2206 standard, which is the highest rank of standardization of helmets, ventilated below $20. And when I discussed about that with my friend Minister Kaib in Morocco, he likes the idea to do something about the helmet. So he took a very brave decision, which is for me something probably only for that. It was worth to have the ministerial meeting in Morocco, because what he said now with each motorbike which is going to be sold, it will be sold with 2 UN standard helmet.
Interesting.
So, and I think we should applaud that. And since then,
Yeah. So, I know you wanted to take some questions. I've got 2 gentlemen.
May I finish that?
Go ahead.
So that is one amazing decision. And since then, I speak with him 2-3 times a week now to make sure how we can implement that. I'm sure that Benacer is behind the scene. And we need to replicate that in other countries. And it's in Latin America, in Africa, if we can do that. And working yesterday, we had a very interesting meeting with some of my colleagues here of the bank and with the managing director, Axel von Trotzenburg. And the World Bank is going to put a maximum effort on that. I had also yesterday a meeting with the president of IDB, Inter-American Development Bank, and they want to do that in Latin American country. So if we can do that, it can be a game changer. I was last week in Israel, and Israel is quite good on road safety. And what they want to implement, what they want to implement,
yes,
is when you get your motorbike driving license, you will get it with one helmet. UN standard. So if you can do things like that, you are going to be able to cover. We need about 500 million UN standard helmets if we want really to be efficient. Please.
Is it my turn now?
That's your turn.
Are you sure, Special Envoy? Merci beaucoup.
Go for it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Arame Salifu. I work as Executive Director at AYGF. AYGF stands for Africa Youth Growth Foundation. We work with the World Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and several UN agencies. I'm looking at the team, transforming transportation, looking at the context of developing countries. Essentially, it's about equity, availability, affordability of transport for the most vulnerable population. Currently, we are implementing a malaria project, for Islamic Bank in Nigeria, and we transporting huge volume of commodities to a very large area of the country. Now, there's a lot of planning to be done on transport arrangements, security, and so on. Now, looking at the context of equity, availability, and affordability, you've got to look at the place of policy.
So I'm going to ask you for your question.
Yeah.
Because lunch is imminent.
The level of investment.
Yes.
We're looking at 2030. Okay. And the level of investment and the need on the ground is so huge. The gap is so huge. What is the strategic plan of the UN or the World Bank to accelerate investment to ensure that there's equity, affordability, and availability of the transport infrastructure for the people?
That is a very broad question. I thank you for it. I'm going to keep that in my mind for a session that it is more appropriate to ask that in. Thank you.
All right,
Next question. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Kesav Sharma. I am from Nepal. I work in the Ministry of Transport and Physical Infrastructure and Transport. First of all, I would like to recall, Mr. Jean, we had met in Marrakesh 3.5 weeks ago. So I thought I have a query to ask in this forum, and I thought you would be the appropriate person. Yes, we are talking about the road crashes and saving the lives of the people. We are having the second UN Decade of Action. This is second. We should remember. The first was from 2011 to 2020, and now we are in the verge of middle of the second decade of action. Still, the results, the data are not much encouraging, especially in the low and middle income countries. And the most vulnerable is the motorbikes, right? So individual country, it is very easy. Okay, I represent the government.
So
government
I
of
do
Nepal.
apologize for hurrying you. We have
Okay.
a short time for lunch. Your
Please.
question is what?
Yeah, my question is, I represent the government. I am secretary of the government. It would be very easy. Okay, your government should do, but we are trying. And the individual government, especially from the low and middle income countries, cannot resolve this global issue. So what we collectively do for achieving the result of Decade of Action second,
there's going to be,
especially from the UN side.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. That's the last question for now. As an international community, what do we do? I feel like you've already told us, John Todd, about what we need to do. So I'm going to ask you if you would just briefly tell us about your book, The Silent Pandemic, where people can find it, and then enjoy your company for the rest of the day here at Transforming Transportation. Thank you.
So, I mean, education, communication, and I thought it would be a kind of a nice gesture, taking the opportunity of this conference in Morocco to make a kind of working document and to leave it as the memory. And what I decided is, to present some of my activities, to present some of the programs on which we're working, including the UN GCDOCO campaign, which is for me one amazing campaign, which started already 1 year ago, which will last for the next 2 years more, with 16 celebrities, with the Olympic and Paralympic gold champion in southern cities, 80 countries, which influence for simple things, as we discussed earlier. And the book is The Silent Pandemic on the Road, because unfortunately, the road, which is a big killer, we don't speak enough about it. I will give you, paradoxal anecdote, which we see every time I'm traveling in developing countries. You see 4 or 5 people on a motorbike because there is no public transportation, because they don't have money to have a proper vehicle, and they have without helmet but with a mask.
So
why? Because they are scared to die because of COVID, and we know very well that there is no threat for that. So we need to wake up this pandemic, and it's a problem of all.
It's a perfect point to end on. Special Envoy, Jean Todt, Special Envoy to the UN Secretary General, no less. We thank you for your time, your advocacy, not just today, but for many, many, many years. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, lunch at 1:30.